Hello, all you ghouls out there on the internet. Welcome back to the Twin Pines Hotel. My name's Cooper, if you don't remember, but hey, we're friends now, right? You can just call me Coop. I hope everyone out there has had a great week and you're ready to hear some more horror stories from the mailbag. I know I am. Oh, but before we begin, I want to catch everyone up on what happened at the end of last week's episode. So, if you've seen it, you'll remember that we had some unwelcome stomping going on from upstairs right there at the end, so I decided to go check it out after recording was over. Well, turns out no one was supposed to be staying up there that night. So I went up to the door that was open ever so slightly, and I went in. Do you know what I found? Nothing. Well, almost nothing. I found these boots. Whoever was up there stomping around left their boots in the corner like an idiot. Well, they're my boots now. If anyone's going to be doing stomping, it's going to be me. Anyway, I just wanted to let everyone know there's nothing out of the ordinary happening here at the hotel. It's completely safe to come back anytime you want. Alright, now that that's over, why don't we go ahead and get started. Our first letter tonight is from Shades of Cool, and it's called The Nightly Knock at 3 a.m. This is a story that happened to me 4 years ago when I was in university. I was 19 and my campus was old. So old that it was known to be haunted. By known, I mean we always had ghost hunters and paranormal investigators interested in our campus. Our campus was small, too. It used to be a neighborhood in the 1800s. The buildings are historic now, and the neighborhood is the campus. So the classes, everything, is held in these old mansions. You could ask anyone, and we all have haunted stories to tell you. But I was well into my second year and hadn't experienced anything, so I didn't believe it. My friend had bought a tarot deck, and she claimed to communicate with the spirit she came into contact with. Now at the time, I was fairly religious and didn't feel safe with tarot, but she promised me that it was fine. Yet, the readings were always so negative. Anyone who came for a reading got the most negative outcome. Boyfriend hasn't replied to you in an hour? He's cheating. You failed your test? Might as well drop out. She also didn't cleanse or do protection. But again, I was a doubter and I hadn't experienced anything until November 7th at 3 a.m. in the morning. I stayed up late all the time talking to my friend. We ended the call at 2:30 a.m. I shut the lights off and was just scrolling on my phone when I heard 3 loud knocks at exactly 3 a.m. It wasn't from the wall. It was on my bed frame. There was no logical explanation for it. This continued every night at exactly 3 a.m. for a week. I was convinced I was crazy. 8 days later, it's 2:59 a.m. and I waited. The clock turned to 3 a.m. No knock. Weird, I thought. But I was glad whatever it was had left. I closed my eyes for 1 second and heard a soft woman's voice. Hello? Can you hear me? I shot out of bed and flicked the light on. I was terrified. I ran to my friend's room and she let me sleep on her floor. The next day, my roommate came to me and told me she was spooked the other night. She said I was laying in bed reading and I look up and a woman in an 1800s dress was just staring at me. We brought a medium to read our room and she told us that our tarot friend was not doing proper protection. Therefore, the spirits in our very active area were attracted to our reading and us. She said the spirit was not particularly negative, but was a woman who died young and did not live a fulfilling life. She cannot pass on. We ended up cleansing the area. The medium helped the spirit to move on. We never had problems after that. Great story, Shades of Cool. I'm really glad you got that knocking to stop. You know, the college I went to had a ghost too, down in the boiler room of one of the old dorms. My friend's dog ran away one time, and we found him down there. I wonder if he just heard the call of a specter and went down to investigate himself. Oh, come on. Well, sounds like whoever was stomping around up there had more than one pair of boots. I gotta go take care of this. But listen, while I'm gone, enjoy another story. This one comes from JustAnotherYaoiFan, and it's called I Saw My Dog at Dia de los Muertos. It happened last year. My family doesn't celebrate the Day of the Dead often, and at the time, one of my aunts was staying with us. The altar was set with photos of our dead loved ones, along with the urn containing our dog named Boo Boo. We put the loved one's favorite food at the altar, including a bread slice, some dog treats, and a bowl of dog food for Boo Boo. I was sitting at the table where the altar was, and that is where I caught a glimpse of Boo Boo looking out the window on his favorite spot on the couch. When my mom and sister came home, I told them what happened. I had never seen my sister so emotional. I caught another glimpse of Boo Boo when I sat at the table again, and he was at the same spot. Later on, my aunt was video chatting with her boyfriend in the living room, and he said he saw a Cocker Spaniel's shadow behind my aunt, believing it was Athena, our other dog, but she was in my siblings' room. This year, I'm thinking about doing the altar again. Is there a way I can contact Boo Boo again?
There's nothing I love more than a dog. I really hope that you can find Boo Boo. And I'm personally asking anyone, if you have any information on how we can make this happen, leave it down in the comments below. Oh, by the way, there wasn't anyone upstairs. I'm starting to think the employees are starting to play a prank on the new hotel manager. And it sounds like they've got a lot of people helping. Alright, it's time to go lay some tough love on these guys. But while I'm gone, enjoy our next story. This one comes from DaveOverHeaven. And honestly, I'm not even sure if it was supposed to come here. This letter is titled Part-Time Surgeon Wanted, Payment in Cash, Max Discretion Needed.
Hello. I'm writing this because, as it may be clear by the title, I'm in desperate need of a capable surgeon. I'll write down here the first information. If I caught your attention, you can read further, and then, after a private chat, we can arrange something for the first surgery. This is a twice per year job, approximately every 6 months, but sometimes I could be needing your services before the usual time, or after, if we're lucky. The payment will be divided. I'll give you half the amount before the surgery, and the other half will be delivered directly to your home. I'll be paying a total of $350,000 per surgery. I will need you to stay at my habitation for the week before the surgery, monitoring my data with the necessary equipment I'll be providing. 1 or 2 days after the surgery, you can return to your life. I won't contact you until the next surgery, or in the unlucky situation in which I need your immediate assistance. During the surgery, it is extremely important that you are willing to euthanize me if the situation gets too dangerous for both of us. All of this is an essential thing for me, and it could even become dangerous if you don't keep this in total secrecy. I'm not expecting from you any kind of questions that are not strictly tied to the medical information needed to perform the surgery, and every kind of data and information will stay exclusively in my possession. I will be giving you a text with all the technical information about the surgery on our first meeting. If you're still reading at this point, I suppose that you don't have any kind of problem with the terms I've listed before. If that's the case, read carefully the next information and conditions to see if you are willing to accept this job. During your permanence at my house the week prior to the surgery, you will have your own rooms that function independently to the rest of the house. For safety reasons, you will have the only pair of keys to that part of the house, and you must lock all the doors during the night. Do not, under any circumstance, exit your room when there's no sun outside, no matter the time of day. Do not intervene even if you hear screaming in pain, no matter what you hear. Please, regardless of your religion or creed, do not remove the Bible, the cross, and any other religious symbols from your room when and if you find them. It will probably happen that you will have to retrieve pieces of flesh that I've lost during the day or during my night walks. Those pieces have to be stored and analyzed. Every morning and every evening before going to sleep, you will have to change my bandages after soaking them in a sterile solution. In the last days right before the surgery, you may have to do this more times per day. The more my condition gets worse, the more I need to be heavily sedated. This means that in the last days, I will need you to feed me. This will happen with tube and funnel, since probably I will already have lost my lips, tongue, and parts of my throat. My food has to be a mixture of 1 kilogram per meal, 3 parts salt, 4 parts raw meat, 2 parts chlorine, and 1 part sulfur. If you injure yourself during one of the procedures, apply a heavy amount of salt and alcohol to the wound and stay locked in your room until you stop losing blood. If this happens too fast, or if you feel pain to the bones near the wound, we will discuss what to do next. During the last days before the surgery, I surely won't be of any company. If you feel bored or stressed, feel free to listen to some music. This may be relaxing for me too. The surgery must be done the 8th day after your arrival at 3 a.m. You will be alone during the procedure. During the surgery, be sure to remove every single bone in excess from my body. I trust that you, as a surgeon, will be able to identify them. Clean all the abscesses and check regularly my heartbeat. If it seems too abnormal, and if I regain consciousness no matter the sedatives, proceed with the lethal injection. If you have to proceed with the injection, you will have only 3 hours to call the number in my office under the name Hemlock. Tell him what happened. He will arrive as fast as possible. In the meantime, put my body in the cremation room and prepare it at maximum heat. When Hemlock comes, leave the house. You will still receive the rest of the payment. If the procedure goes well, your only and last obligations to me will be checking that my functions are in the norm. I won't be needing help to feed and all the other things listed before. I'll be the one telling you to return freely to your house. Return the keys to your rooms before leaving. The second part of the payment will arrive directly at your house in the 10 days after the surgery. Thanks for reading this advertisement. If you have any kind of questions, I'll try to answer, if they don't violate too much my privacy or the nature of this situation.
Ugh. Thanks for the letter, Dave, or ad. I hope you were able to find someone to help you out with that little at-home procedure. So, the staff, they're being really tight-lipped about whatever's going on. When I ask them about it, they either tell me they don't know what I'm talking about, or they tell me you shouldn't have taken what wasn't yours. What was I supposed to do, though? The stomping wasn't going to stop itself, right? I didn't want to have to do this, but I don't know if I have a choice. When I first got here, there was a letter that told me if I have a problem in the hotel that I can't solve myself, I should use this. I know, a Ouija board, right? Sounds crazy. The last time I used one of these was when I summoned Payman to pester my little brother after we had a particularly bad fight. Oh, I miss him. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give this a go, but while I'm doing that, let's open up another letter. This one comes from IronViiking, and it's simply titled Tent Camping.
My wife and I love camping. We made it a point to go as often as we could during the spring, summer, and fall. The winter was a bit too cold for a tent, and we didn't have enough money for a full-fledged camper. 3 weeks ago, we were out on a normal camping trip. One of the things about Oklahoma is that fall doesn't really come on strong until November. Sure, it cools off a bit, but not so much as to keep you indoors by the fire. Everything was going as normal. We got set up and just enjoyed the scenery. My wife sat down in her favorite camp chair with a novel, and I went about firing up the grill and preparing dinner. She was always getting online and finding some new camping recipe or another. This trip was no different. Ranch butter chicken was on the menu in foil boats. I like foil boats because I don't have to keep as close an eye on them as other things like steak or burgers. I got the food going and sat down in my chair by the water. I fish while she reads. We just like getting out and not having to worry about the normal hustle and bustle of our busy house. I think you need to turn those, she said after the foil boats had been on the grill for about 10 or 15 minutes. I easily lose track of time while I'm fishing. The slightest hint of a bite and I'm on the edge of my seat. Most of the time, it's nothing. Oh yeah, I better check, I replied, and got up and went to flip the boats. They were starting to sizzle, but I didn't smell the butter or the chicken yet, so they were still a way off from being done. Back to fishing. This is how our evenings at the lake, or in the woods, or wherever we find to camp go. She does her thing, I do my things, we do our thing together, and go to sleep. The time spent to just unwind is so welcome for both of us that we don't mind that we're not doing something or going somewhere. It was a beautiful night. We sat at our picnic table and ate away at our chicken, which was really delightful, by the way. I told her to make sure and mark that recipe on her phone for recurring use. Eventually, she kissed me and went to lay down, and I sat up with a lantern trying to lure those pesky fish onto a hook. No luck tonight. Eventually, when the moon was high in the night sky and the coyotes were going mad off in some distant field, I decided it was time to hit the sack. No reason staying up all night, alone, when I could snuggle up to the woman I loved in the tent. Normally, I don't fall asleep quickly or easily. Within a few minutes of laying down, I have to pee. I hate that part. Just about the time I get comfy, boom, the feeling hits and I can't ignore it. If I do, I just lay there awake until I eventually get up. This time, the feeling never hit and I was asleep within a few minutes. I don't know what time it was when I woke. I'm not even 100% sure what woke me up. I assume it was the overwhelming silence outside. I blinked a few times and then looked around. Nothing was making any noise outside. There was no wind. There were no crickets or coyotes. It was odd, but nothing that really made me feel any kind of way. Just before I could lay my head down, I heard something different. A twig snapped. It wasn't uncommon to have raccoons or possums wandering around the tent during the evening, but they didn't snap twigs. Shortly after the twig, I heard a heavy huff of breath. Still, I wasn't scared, but curious. I listened intensely, trying to figure out what I was hearing and to determine if it was something threatening. Quickly enough, the unmistakable sound of the zipper of the tent being open interrupted the silence. "Hey, who's there?" I called as I began feeling around the tent for my flashlight. "What's going on?" my wife asked groggily as she began to rustle from her sleep. The tent flap opened before I could find my flashlight. In the darkness, I could only make out a form. I didn't have enough time to make sense of the form. There was a flash of movement, and a huge hulking form came barreling into the tent. The growl, it was so primal. I'd never heard anything like it before. The creature jumped directly onto my wife. She screamed. Something scraped against the inflatable bed we slept on, and it began to hiss as the air was released from it. The sudden change in weight and lack of stability caused me to roll off the side. Adrenaline coursed through my veins. I charged the figure that was attacking my wife. I hit a brick wall of muscle and fur. With a swift motion, it knocked me away like I was a rag doll. The force of the blow knocked the wind from my lungs, and I landed sharply on my back at the edge of the tent. I felt something wet running down my chest. Then, my wife's screams stopped. The screams were replaced by a gurgle, and the growl intensified. "Jenny," I yelled and stumbled back to my feet. "Get off of her." I charged again. I had to get it off of her. I could hear it tearing at her flesh. I could smell the acidic scent of blood in the air. Not like a cut, but like an animal that had been opened up, its insides revealed. This time, when I got to the creature, it turned to face me. One giant hand reached out and grabbed my throat. I struggled to get free, but I wasn't strong enough to break free of its iron grasp. In the darkness, I still couldn't see well enough to make much out other than figures and forms. I could tell my wife was no longer struggling. My stomach knotted up. The hollow feeling of helplessness grabbed me, and my fight began to fade. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I looked on at the creature that had me gripped around the throat and off my feet now. As I gasped for breath, the creature leaned in close to me. Its breath was hot and smelled of death. This was going to be my end. I tried to look into its eyes, but all I saw was glints of darkness being reflected back at me in the darkness. Then it darted in. The pain in my shoulder was sudden and beyond any pain I had felt throughout my life. The sounds of bone crunching is completely different when it comes from inside of you. Not only can you hear it, but you can feel it. My shoulder collapsed between the strength of the creature's jaws. I screamed out in pain. Darkness filled my vision, and I passed out. When I woke, it was daylight. Where my wife had been was only a bloody mess. There was a trail of blood that led out of the tent. It looked like she had been dragged. I fought against the pain that hit me from what seemed like everywhere in my body and got to my feet. When I walked out of the tent, I was alone. There was no sign of my wife save for the bloody trail that went off away from the tent and into the tall grass behind us. I searched for an hour, but never found her body. When the game wardens arrived, they took my statement and I was taken to a local hospital. Officially, we were attacked by a bear. A hunt was organized, but they never found the animal or my wife. This part of Oklahoma doesn't even have bears. Since then, I've done my own research. The only thing that I can find that makes sense, which doesn't make any sense, is an urban legend of a local werewolf. I've always respected and enjoyed urban legends and the paranormal, but werewolves? In the weeks since, I haven't slept much at all. My dreams are always filled with images of running through forests and fields chasing animals. In my dreams, I always manage to catch whatever is running from me and tearing it to pieces. I've also noticed that I can hear and smell things much stronger than I could before. It's been 3 weeks. Something in me is changing. Dogs growl at me when I walk by them, and when I look at them, I get the urge to growl at them. Something gets to them then. They whimper and back away. I can't eat vegetables anymore. Cooked meat tastes like rot, and the only thing that satisfies my hunger is super rare meat.
Oh man, I love a good werewolf story. I don't think there's enough of them out there, to be totally honest. Thanks for sharing, IronViiking. Oh, and by the way, be sure to buy yourself some nice dog food for those long full moon nights. All right, listeners, do you hear that? That is the sound of silence. I don't know who I was talking to on that Ouija board, but they were very upset that they left their boots inside that room. So, I managed to strike up a deal. They get their boots back, and I get a quiet hotel, and they leave. Well, I guess the spirit world's pretty cold, because they accepted that deal. You guys just missed a dozen sets of boots walking out the door. I hope they're more courteous at the next hotel they end up at. Hey, I just solved my first problem at the hotel. Maybe I'll be a good hotel manager after all. Oh, and speaking of that, it's time for me to go make my rounds. Thanks so much for lurking around the hotel with me tonight. I really appreciate it. Please, if you like what we're doing here, be sure to like and subscribe so you'll be the first to know when a new episode comes out. Also, a huge thank you to everybody who let me read their letters here tonight. I really appreciate it. I hope to see you again next week, and as always, thanks for visiting the Twin Pines Hotel. We hope to see you again soon.